Welcome in, Fantasizers. Another episode of Your Big Fat Fantasy, your BFF. This is episode 12, and I'm Nicholas Logan.
Anthony Bravo coming to you live once again.
Yeah, we'll start the show off. Pretty much talking about our dynasties a little bit. Another week, another fantasy football week for us. I went 1-1 this week in dynasty. Finally lost my undefeated streak. Now 4-1. Went to first to third place, just like that. Lost to the defending champs, so can't be too mad when you lose to, the guy who's defending his, championship. But
yeah, I went 1-1 as well. I went 5-0 in the Big Dogs League, and I am 2-3 in the Shark Tank League. My Shark Tank team is garbage right now. I have Antonio Gibson as my RB2, so that just goes to show you where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
But my Big Dogs team, on the other hand, is looking pretty good. I got Herbert at the helm. I got Rhamondre Stevenson as a late pick. I got some veteran running backs in James Conner, Aaron Jones. Maybe trying to move them within the next couple of weeks for a guy like Saquon, JT. Maybe even may throw David Montgomery in there as well. So you never know.
Yeah, definitely a lot to work on. I know I like my team right now still in Big Dogs, the league you're undefeated in. Gonna be a little tough week for me. I do have a lot of rookies on my team, but none of them have really solidified themselves yet. I'm starting Brian Robinson this week because I have no Derrick Henry, I have no Robert Woods, two guys that I've been starting pretty much all year, and so you have to just kind of have a deep dive in my bench and hope one of these rookies pop off. Maybe I might throw in Wan'Dale Robinson in my lineup if he finally can get going. But yeah, definitely gonna have to start Brian Robinson and just hope for the best this week as the bye weeks start coming in these next 8 weeks. So.
Yeah, you got Henry on the bye. You got who else you got on the bye?
I got Robert Woods.
Robert Woods on the bye.
But we'll see. I mean, yeah, bye weeks are coming. This is the time we're trying to get that debt. This is where. This is what your fantasy teams are made of. Is starting to get to that point where once your starters are on that bye, do you have that depth to really get you those wins in those tough weeks? So.
Yeah. This is where you really find out if you're in rebuild or if you're a contender.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so right now 3-2 in Big Dogs, 4-1 and Shark Tank playoff spot. If the season ended today, I'd be in the playoffs for both leagues. So not bad for me.
Not bad indeed. We can transition to our hits and misses.
Yeah.
You hit 5 of 5.
I hit 5 of 5 of my picks this week.
I hit 1 of 5. So let's just start off with these since you got all yours.
All right, I'll start off with my lowest fantasy score from the week. Chris Olave, 15.4 fantasy points. I say that's pretty good, especially if that's your third wide receiver or your flex spot. Chris Olave. Yeah. Actually, one of my friends texted me on Sunday morning, asked me if he should start Chris Olave or Amari Cooper. I told him Chris Olave. Amari Cooper did have 5 more points than Chris Olave. And Chris Olave could have had a way bigger game, but he left the third quarter when he had a concussion. He caught the touchdown and then hit the ground and had to go and was out the rest of the game for a concussion. But so could have had a way bigger game. Could have played that whole fourth quarter in what was a very high-scoring game against the Seattle Seahawks. Caught 4 of 6 of his catches for 54 yards, another touchdown. Right now, he is Chris Olave, the first among rookie wide receivers in targets with 42. He's currently tied with Garrett Wilson. So Chris Olave, definitely a lot of volume there, especially when Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry continue to miss games. And Chris Olave still leads the NFL in air yards, 754 air yards through the first 5 weeks. Chris Olave, my first hit of the week.
Definitely a solid hit. Only hit I got this week was Mike Williams. I called it a must start, and I must say I was right on the money. Williams going 10 receptions for 13 targets for 134 yards. If he added a touchdown, it would have been a monster day, but he still ended up with a hefty 23.4 PPR points. So good day for Mike Williams for sure.
Yeah. And then my next pick is Dameon Pierce, sitting as the RB 11 right now. Had 20.3 fantasy points in week 5. had 26 carries, his most on the season. And with those carries, he had a total of 99 yards, 3.81 yards per carry. Not particularly bad, not particularly good, but just a pretty good game. Added a touchdown, and which is now his third straight game with a touchdown. He caught 3 of 5 targets for 14 yards. And he actually, in Dameon Pierce in week 5, had 13 missed tackles, the most by any player this season. So I don't know if you guys saw his interview. I don't know if it was yesterday or today or a couple of days ago, but I just saw it today where they asked him about yards after contact. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I live for it. He's like, I love when people hit me, I spin out. People get my legs. I like to run out of that. When someone's there, I like to hit. He likes to hit people. And I mean, you've seen that. We talked about it earlier when we talked about it in the preseason, that video where he runs through the end zone with no helmet on and just an absolute monster. I mean, I can't believe teams saw that and were like, I don't know if this guy's NFL ready. And he's NFL ready. RB11, Dameon Pierce, getting better and better as the weeks go by on a struggling Texans team. So
yeah, you actually saw him spin out and do into a touchdown on week 5 too. I even texted the chat. I was like, Dameon Pierce is the man.
Yeah.
Right when I saw that. So yeah, Dameon Pierce, he's that guy. Joe Mixon was I'll say is my first miss. He was kind of very solid on the ground game. 14 attempts for 78 yards. He had 5.57 yards per carry, but he just failed to have the monster day I anticipated. Only caught 3 balls for 10 total yards and only ended up with 11.8 PPR points. He could have had a big day had he scored the rushing touchdown. He came just 1 yard short, and the touchdown went to Joe Burrow. So mediocre outing for Joe Mixon. Could be falling to a running back 2 if they don't find him in place to score.
Yeah,
I'm sure they will though. But.
Yeah, Joe Mixon's one of those guys where like I'm so high on Mixon every year. Like come playoff time, he starts. Yeah, if you make playoffs and Joe Mixon's on your team, that guy puts up like 20, 25 points in like fantasy playoffs. So
yeah,
definitely Joe Mixon going forward. You have to start him. But yeah, that's kind of thing with the story been him. He's always been like a yard short of a touchdown. He doesn't get that carry at the end, and he's just one touchdown away from having like a big fantasy day.
Yeah.
So
and that's kind of a good sign, kind of a bad sign.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Slow start, but he'll pick it up definitely. One guy who had a slow start and he's picked it up recently, Derrick Henry, my third hit this week. Derrick Henry right now the running back 6. Had a had a season high this year in fantasy points with 27.2. That was his best game of the year. Had a season high in carries with 28 and had 102 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is his most touchdowns this season. The last 3 weeks, Derrick Henry has 25.4 fantasy points, and that's good enough to be the number 3 back the last 3 weeks after putting up only 8 points in weeks 1 and 2. Derrick Henry now on a bye, but after the bye, he'll come back and definitely keep going with that RB1 status that he's so used to getting.
Yeah, heating up, and hopefully he stays hot. My second miss, Jamar Chase. There just wasn't much going on offense for the Bengals. Chase had a couple of nice catches, seven receptions on 9 targets for 50 yards. Even had a long ball to set them up for that Burrow rushing touchdown, but he still only ended up with 12 PPR points. I expect him to bounce back next week at New Orleans for sure.
Yeah, definitely he should. Then my 4th pick, we'll go with Devontae Adams from the Monday night game. Right now the wide receiver 5 had 27.4 fantasy points. Wasn't a big volume game from him. Didn't see a lot of targets. Only had 7 targets, but 2 of his 3 catches were big touchdowns. Which had 124 yards finished with on 3 catches. That was good for 41.33 yards per catch. Just an insane game from Devontae Adams that has that big playability year in and year out. Had, like I said, 2 touchdowns. This is the only time this year where he had less than, I think, 9 targets. In week 2, he only had 7 targets. In that game, he only had 12 yards. So had 7 targets this game and had 124. In week 2, only had 12 yards and still had a touchdown that week, but only 9.2 fantasy points. But Devontae Adams, a big Monday night game just due to that deep ball threat that Devontae Adams is. And almost had a big catch, barely was out of bounds, which probably cost the Raiders the game. But
yeah, it's hard to have a big game and you still get the loss like that. It almost makes you want to push a cameraman.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see. Devontae has another thing. Yeah, look out for his status for week 6. Might be suspended or something.
But, that brings me to another great wide receiver who had a mediocre outing, Scary Terry. This was mainly due to Carson Wentz only being able to find second-year wide receiver De'Ami Brown. He had 2 big touchdowns. He had like 20+ fantasy points. I didn't even really see his fantasy points because he's on the waivers in my league, in all my leagues. So, I don't know about Wentz. He could have won the game in the final seconds, and he gave up an interception inside the 20. It's not looking good for this offense.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll be talking about them later in our show about the Thursday game. Not looking good. They kind of started hot. Wentz started hot, but Wentz kind of has that thing where he starts hot and he starts failing towards the middle and the end of the season. Which is why he's been bounced on like 3 different teams the last few years. So Travis Kelce will be my last pick, my last hit. Like I said, I went 5 for 5 last week. He was actually my highest fantasy scorer last week. Travis Kelce, 33.5 fantasy points. Again, didn't have a really high volume game like Devontae Adams, but he had 4 touchdowns, a career high for Travis Kelce. Only had 3 the whole year coming into the game. Had 4 big ones. Only had 25 yards receiving, but like I said, the 4 touchdowns just was the reason why he had such a monster game, just maintaining that tight end 1 status. Right now, Travis Kelce, through 5 weeks, has a 23.2 target percentage, which is 4th in the league. And right now, just the wide receivers in Kansas City not looking good. We talked about it earlier, how like Mahomes, as talented as he is, there's only really been 2 relevant fantasy players. It was always Travis Kelce, and then it was Tyreek Hill. And then we were kind of figuring out who's going to be the wide receiver this year. Was it Juju coming in? Is it MVS coming in? Would McCole Hardman now step up? Would it be rookie Sky Moore? But right now, it really hasn't been anyone. Patrick Mahomes has 15 passing touchdowns this year, and only 2 of them have gone to wide receivers. That was McCole Hardman in week 1 and Justin Watson in week 2. So a wide receiver has not had a touchdown in Kansas City in 3 straight weeks. Right now, Juju's getting the most targets per game, but he only has 257 total yards. Just look out for that wide. It's just a very, very shaky
wide receiver.
Even Clyde Edwards is getting more looks in the receiving game in the end zone especially. So, just really shaky wide. We'll see. It's a long season. We'll see who will step up. And hopefully, I'm hoping it's Sky Moore. Having 2 leagues, I hope that he steps up. The guy that I said I would rather draft him later than draft MVS, Hardman, or Juju ahead of him. So, we'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
But they're still winning games, so they don't have to change the recipe over there.
Yeah, and on my last miss, it's going to be the Jets wide receivers, Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. 2 guys I'm hoping all step it up as well. The Jets running backs were actually the fantasy stars of the game. You have Breece Hall. He had 2 receptions for 100 yards, 97 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown for 27.7 PPR points. You got Michael Carter. He only had 2 receptions, 12 reception yards for 21 and 21 rushing yards. But he had 2 rushing touchdowns for 17.3 PPR points. So, Zach Wilson is just looking like he needs to get more comfortable with his receivers before, they actually start posting fantasy league winning numbers.
Yeah, definitely. So, those were our picks for week 5.
Our hits and misses.
Yeah, I mean, my hits, your misses. I think Mike Williams outscored all of your misses, but not outscored him. I think he only had 5 less points than all 4 of your other guys combined. Yeah, so big game for him. So moving on to our next little segment here. I just want to talk about some rookie running backs that you can start building your dynasty teams around. And even in redraft leagues, these 4 running backs will be essential to you winning a championship this year, I believe. We're going to start off with the guy who was the number 1 running back chosen in the draft this past year, Breece Hall. Right now, the running back 9. You just said it. He had 97 rushing yards, a touchdown, had 2 catches for 100 yards, just 2 big plays. Michael Carter kind of stole into some of his red zone carries. Michael Carter had 2 touchdowns, and Breece Hall could have easily finished day with 3 touchdowns and could have had
would have had 40, 50 points.
Yeah, he would have had a monster game if Michael Carter. But going forward, I think Breece Hall just looks like the reason why the Jets took him as the number 1 running back in the draft.
And the reason why you should have took him in rookie drafts.
Yeah, the reason why you should have been your first pick, reason why you should build your dynasty teams around this guy. Right now, he had 5.39 yards per carry last game. Right now this season, he's averaging 4.8 yards per carry, which is 15th in the league, which is crazy for a running back. And he's only getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And he's number 3 in the league in yards per route ran at 2.6. So a lot of people thought Michael Carter would have been the receiving back in New York, but Breece Hall has looked like not only the guy that they're going to run the ball with, but also the guy they're going to throw the ball to. Just a third down back, a bell cow, Breece Hall going forward. Definitely build your team around him. Another guy to build your team around going to be Dameon Pierce, the guy that I hit on from week 5, averaging 4.4 yards per carry this year. The last 3 weeks, he's finished as an RB1, averaging 21.3 fantasy points those last 3 weeks, and was the number 5 back the last 3 weeks. So top 5 back. He's just getting going. And like I said, in a Texans team that's struggling to throw the ball, they're definitely going to rely a lot on Dameon Pierce to run it.
For sure.
Breece Hall and Dameon Pierce both have been the main starting backs, I guess. But 2 guys that are going to be coming in now starting week 6 is going to be Kenneth Walker. Went to Michigan State. Had 14.8 fantasy points last week once Rashad Penny went down. Rashad Penny now out for the year. One reason why I said do not draft Rashad Penny is he's injured all the time. I didn't draft no Rashad Penny, but I did draft a lot of Kenneth Walker, especially in best ball, to get ready for this moment as soon as Rashad Penny goes down. Not that I would hope for any guy to get injured, but just kind of the story with Rashad Penny and his first 4 years in the league. Kenneth Walker stepped in, looked good, had 8 carries for 88 yards. So that's good for 11 yards per carry. Had a touchdown. And even before that, he had limited carries, but right now he's 12th in the league in yards per carry with averaging 5 yards per carry. So just ahead of Breece Hall, ahead of Dameon Pierce. So now that the volume's there, now that he's going to be the main back, you can definitely see Kenneth Walker putting up numbers like he did in college or similar. And his last year in college had 1,636 rushing yards, which was 5.8 yards per carry, and had 18 total rushing touchdowns. Definitely start. If he's on your waivers, pick him up. If he's somehow on your waivers, I think a lot of leagues probably had him stashed.
Yeah,
I
remember
I had him stashed in one of our redraft leagues. So.
In the mock draft video, I was telling everyone, stock up on Kenneth Walker because he's gonna take that lead back role this year.
Yeah, and even if Rashad Penny was healthy, I think if he would struggle, they're gonna go on.
Yeah, for sure.
And Pete Carroll loves throwing the ball. Like you've mentioned it plenty of times on the show.
Yeah.
Another guy to look out for, Brian Robinson. Didn't have a big game last week. Coming off a big scary injury, but came out running to many men, and he's gonna be the man in Washington going forward in his first game of his career. He outcarried Antonio Gibson, not much, only had 9 carries, but Antonio Gibson only had 3. He had more yards per carry, not much again, had 2.44. Antonio Gibson only had 2. But going forward, I think Brian Robinson will be the main guy. In college, he had 1,343 rushing yards his last year, 5 yards per carry, and 14 touchdowns. So Brian Robinson, like I said, I'm starting him this week. But should be the main guy you want to stash and just get ready to build. Just so those 4 guys you want to build your dynasty team around. And as far as the running backs go,
Antonio Gibson had a big drop, and after that drop, put Robinson.
And we already knew they were gonna get rid of Gibson as soon as any little mistake he made. They were gonna go with Brian Robinson. They would have gone with him week 1 if he was healthy. But so. Definitely look for those backs to build your team around and redrafts. Start getting those guys in your lineup coming up as the season goes on.
For sure. And since we're on the topic of running backs, just a running back I want to talk about. We're here. We're at the Rhamondre Stevenson takeover time. He received a 90% snap share this past Sunday. That's going to be the most in a game ever in his career. He should be the running back 1 in New England, even when Damian Harris returns, if he plays very strong. And Belichick already said it. Rhamondre's a 3-down back. He could be the next big workhorse like Henry, like Saquon. He had 161 yards on 25 carries. Who knows when Mac Jones is coming back? Who knows if Mac Jones is going to be, even really good when he comes back? Belichick, I feel like he's gonna go run heavy. Yeah. Until the season ends. So, man, Rhamondre Stevenson. If you don't have him, trade for him. If you have him, leave him alone. Don't touch him.
Yeah. Another guy that people probably wanted a lot in PPR leagues.
Yeah.
Receiving back, but he's going to be, I mean, even in week 5, he had 111 yards after contact, which is the most in week 5.
That's nuts.
So he's going to continue to do that.
25 carries, it's nuts too. Like,
yeah, that's like Derrick Henry status.
Yeah, so. If Bill Belichick is willing to give you 25 carries, it's safe to say he believes in you.
Yeah, especially when they've been running committee ever since
for the longest.
I don't remember ever top Patriot running back in fantasy football.
Yeah, Pierre Strong also a waiver wire target.
Yeah, someone to look out for definitely.
Yeah,
in case they go to that committee or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rhamondre Stevenson definitely. I have him in one league. Happy about that. And I was gonna move on to a little segment. Right now, I don't know if you guys do any underdog or best ball or anything, but right now underdog they're doing like a resurrection best ball league. So it's from week 6 to 17. A draft that you're drafting players pretty much for week 6 to 17. Yeah. So just 3 guys that probably weren't getting drafted in best ball or drafted late in best ball or drafted late in redrafts or probably are still sitting on your waivers and a lot of redraft leagues definitely. I'm gonna start with the quarterbacks. First up is gonna be Geno Smith. Right now he's the quarterback 6.
Sleeper.
Big sleeper. He actually leading the league in completion percentage. He has a 75% completion percentage. 1,305 passing yards, 9 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. And he's running the ball efficiently, 77 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Before the season started, Geno Smith was the QB 37 in underdog. Now, if you go do a drafted underdog, he's seen as the QB 13. And in PPR formats, he's the QB 6. So a big step up from where he was. I said probably no one. I mean, QB 37 when the Seahawks said he was going to be the starter. That means there was 5 other quarterbacks ahead of him that weren't even a starter on their team. You're talking about like
people were even probably drafting
Jimmy
Lock
G at the time, him. Drew Lock or Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett, who's now the starter, but just other guys that like they were Jacoby Brissett. You know what I mean? So Geno Smith now just tearing up the league. Hopefully he can keep it going. I think he will now that Kenneth Walker's there. He has 2 big receivers and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. We'll talk about Lockett a little later. But another quarterback that has done well this year, Daniel Jones, especially considering this would probably be his last year as a starter in New York. If he had a bad year with Giants right now, 4-1. Daniel Jones getting it done with no receivers. He lost Shepard, Tony's been out, Galladay's been out, Richie James injured, Wan'Dale Robinson. Like they're
receiver
really
is on that team.
Yeah, they're really digging in deep in New York on who's going to be their wide receiver 1. I'm a big Wan'Dale Robinson believer. He hopefully can play this week and get going.
I'm a big Tony believer.
I'm a big Tony believer too, and hopefully he can get going this week. But even with no receivers, Daniel Jones still has a 67% completion percentage, as 848 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but does have 2 rushing touchdowns. Actually, Daniel Jones right now, he's 3rd in the league in rushing yards, has 230 rushing yards, 5.61 yards per carry. The only 2 people ahead of Daniel Jones are Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. So I'm sure if you asked anyone who has more rushing yards this year, Daniel Jones or Josh Allen, I'm sure 90% of the people would probably say Josh Allen. I would have thought Josh Allen if I didn't even look this up today. So getting big and like we said, running quarterbacks, they're big in fantasy. Go get Daniel Jones if he's still available. Go draft Daniel Jones if you're doing any underdog. Just try to get Daniel Jones. Once those receivers get going, now that Saquon's getting going, the offense is going to open up for him. And Daniel Jones right now, he's the QB 14 in fantasy. He actually dropped off in underdog. He was the QB 21 to start the season. Now he's the QB 24, but I think he can maintain around the top 15 quarterback in the fantasy football. Another guy in the top 15 or even the top 10 this year is Jared Goff. Another guy that probably wasn't drafted. He went from the QB 23 in the preseason, now the QB 9. 60% completion percentage, 1,355 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. 8th in the league in passing yards, Jared Goff, the QB 7 right now in fantasy football. And he was a QB 1 in 2017. 2017, he was the QB 12, and in 2018, he was the QB 6. So the only 2 years he's finished as a QB 1, and I think he can maintain that, especially another offensive heavy team in the Lions. Jameson Williams comes back and Swift comes back. Jared Goff Jared Goff just had his worst game against the Patriots, who Belichick already knows. He beat him in the Super Bowl, so he knows who Jared Goff is. Those are my 3 big quarterbacks that have been booming this year, and now my 3 running backs. First up, going to be Josh Jacobs. That's because he's had back-to-back 30-point fantasy point games. If you thought his week 4 was good when he had 144 yards and 5.14 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns, had 31 receiving yards, you should check his week 5 numbers. Had 154 yards, 7.33 yards per carry, 1 touchdown, and had 39 receiving yards. So bigger game. Had less fantasy points in week 5 because in week 4 he had 1 extra touchdown. But Josh Jacobs looking like he's heating up. I know a lot of people probably passed on Josh Jacobs to start the season because they know how Josh McDaniels is. We just talked about the Patriots being a committee. Josh McDaniels was the offensive coordinator when they were a committee, so a lot of people thought, well, Zamir White might come in and take touches away, but Josh Jacobs looks like the bell cow. I don't even see any running back. I don't even see Zamir White on the field anymore. I don't even know who else is on the field. Brandon Bolden gets some work when Jacobs needs a rest, but it's really been Josh Jacobs, and if he can continue running the ball like that, that looks like a league winner. Someone that you're probably getting in the 6th or later rounds. Went from the RB24 and underdog now going as the RB15. So big step up. Another guy with a big step up. Guy that I had faith in. All the other guys I really had no faith in, but this guy I did. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back 8 right now in PPR leagues. I know a lot of people say, well, Clyde Edwards, he's only 8, and he's also 8 in standard leagues too. So yeah, he's getting a lot of receptions, and Mahomes is throwing him a lot, but he's the same PPR and standard leagues. He's still the running back 8. 5 touchdowns this year, 2 rushing, 3 receiving. And if you don't think he's been efficient running the ball, he's at 4.46 yards per carry. So not bad for a guy that people don't think runs the ball so well. Has 360 total yards of offense. He's number 9 in the league right now in yards per route ran with 1.85. So top 10 in that category. Probably another guy going around the 6th, 7th round. And he's now the RB16 and underdog after starting the season as the RB26. Another guy that I really had no faith in, Miles Sanders. Right now, he's the RB12, I believe, in PPR. 414 yards this year, 3 touchdowns, 4.76 yards per carry. We thought another backfield that was going to be a committee with Kenneth Gainwell
and Boston Scott.
So that's what we thought. And right now, it looks like Miles Sanders. The only person he's really competing with touches is Jalen Hurts, who's leading the league in rushing attempts inside the 10-yard line. But still having a great season. Miles Sanders, a guy that I passed on, and I actually did an underdog resurrection league, and I actually drafted him as my second back. So went from the RB29 now down to the RB19. And now moving on my wide receivers, my top 3 is going to be, first up, Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 8. Another guy that really dropped up. He was the wide receiver 48 to start the season. Now he's at the wide receiver 29, but his PPR ranking is a wide receiver 8. A guy that I don't know why a lot of people kind of passed on. I don't even know how he was ranked as the 48th wide receiver. And I know why, because people did not trust Geno Smith. So that's the only reason.
I didn't trust Geno Smith.
Yeah, I didn't trust Geno Smith. And Tyler Lockett's always kind of been like that boom bust guy. But like sometimes that's kind of what you need to put in your flex spot, which helps you win leagues. Tyler Lockett has been a top 20 wide receiver since 2018. So he's always been a little better than a wide receiver 2, borderline wide receiver 1, definitely a flex play, and having a big year this year, having a better year than DK Metcalf so far. 406 yards, 32 catches, and 2 touchdowns for Tyler Lockett. Another guy that I was really passing on, I don't think I drafted him at all, Christian Kirk.
Me either.
Wide receiver 19, but that's because he's had slow games the last 2 weeks.
Didn't he have a donut the other day?
He might have been close to one. And maybe he had like a late second half resurgence, but even then he's the wide receiver 19. Had a hot start to the year the first 3 weeks. He was a top 20 finisher the first 3 weeks of the season. Right now he's averaging,
he had a catch that game.
He had one catch.
Yeah.
How many yards?
11.
So what, 2.1?
2.1 points.
Yeah, so that with that game, he's still a wide receiver 19. And he has his career high in yards per catch, averaging 16.1 yards per catch. Looking like Trevor Lawrence's main wide receiver over there in Jacksonville. Has 21 total catches, 338 yards this year, and 3 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 40 to start the year, now moved all the way up to wide receiver 23.
Yeah, we were saying that signing could either be good or bad, and it's looking good.
Yeah, and I feel like the Jacksonville, they're not really at their full potential yet, and they've had a hot start to the season, and they kind of slowed down the last couple of weeks, but I know Zane Jones, who's been there, wide receiver 2, has been hasn't really played, and they're still trying to figure out. They're a young team, a new head coach, just trying to get going. Another guy that actually I drafted a lot this year, Amari Cooper. Right now, the PPR has him as the wide receiver 15, 304 yards, 27 catches, and 3 touchdowns. He moved up from the wide receiver 37 to the wide receiver 25 now, an underdog. He's averaging 2.84 yards per route ran, 7th in the league, and he's first in the league in target rate as 40.2%. So, a guy that's just going to take off, especially when Deshaun Watson comes back. So, Amari Cooper, a lot of people passed on him for another reason, were quarterback issues. So,
yeah.
Those 9 guys that I just said right there, those QBs, those running backs, those receivers, definitely look to trade for them or keep them. They should go get them on waivers if they're somehow still there. Or definitely there could be some league winners that you can sleep and try to buy low on them right now. Maybe some people are selling them high. Maybe you can convince someone that they won't maintain that spot, like a Clyde Edwards or a Josh Jacobs, and you can convince someone to get a steal for these players.
So who are your league busts?
My league bust. I have 3. I'm gonna just do one at each position. First up, gonna be Matthew Stafford, guy I drafted. QB 22 right now, not looking good.
No.
Which is crazy because even though Matthew Stafford has 7 interceptions, he's second in the league in completion percentage after Geno Smith. Only 5 touchdowns with 7 interceptions. He's actually he's actually tied first in the league with turnovers, tied with Matt Ryan, another guy I drafted. He was the QB 12 to start the year. Now moved to QB 19. Only 1,323 passing yards this year, and 527 of those yards have been a Cooper Kupp. So
that's
crazy. More than 1/3 of his passing yards going to Cooper Kupp. Just insane. Just a turnover machine, Matthew Stafford. I know you
led the league in interceptions last year. He loves throwing picks.
Leading the league again.
Yeah, tied Trevor Lawrence last year with 17. So
yeah,
he likes throwing picks, man. What could you say? I think he averages like a pick a game.
You can say he averages a pick a game right now. He's at 7 interceptions right now.
Yeah.
And through 5 weeks, so he's averaging more than one. And he has 2 fumbles, I believe. 3 fumbles for a loss this year.
Yeah.
So.
And 17 and
2 turnovers.
17 and 17 games last year, and then he has 7 in
5
games.
3 fumble losses.
Sheesh.
So 2 turnovers.
He's averaging a little more than an interception a game, if anything.
And he's barely averaging one. He's averaging 1 touchdown a game. So
so
not a good year for Stafford.
And that touchdowns to Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, if Cooper Kupp's not there, who knows the kind of quarterback Matthew Stafford?
Who knows the
is.
team they even are?
Yeah, they're probably 0-5 or something.
But yeah,
and they're in a tough division too with the Niners and the Cardinals and. It's gonna Seahawks good now. I mean,
we gotta edit.
Yeah, we gotta fix our standings. Seahawks need to go up a little bit.
Yeah,
definitely a tough division there. My other bust, I'm gonna be running back Najee Harris, a guy that I'm really rooting for.
I was rooting for it too. I thought he was gonna be a workhorse.
Yeah, just not looking good. You mentioned it. Probably won't be a workhorse going forward, as Mike Tomlin just said. They're gonna rely a lot more on Jaylen Warren, a rookie running back. Najee Harris, 63rd in the league right now in yards per carry with 3.22 yards per carry. Seen as the RB29 right now in PPR leagues. Went from the RB6, was going in the first round or early second round. And a lot of drafts this year. Redrafts, dynasty leagues. Was definitely going within the first 15 picks. Now I'm sure if you had the chance again, you'd probably get him in the 5th, 6th round. It's not looking good for Najee Harris. Only 286 total yards this year. A guy that we thought was going to be a PPR beast.
Yeah.
Only 64 receiving yards. Only 2 touchdowns this year. Has only finished as a running back 1 once this year. And that was week 2. He only had 13.8 points that game. So week 2 is not a good week for running backs. A lot of weeks, 13.8 is not putting you in the top 15, 20 in running back scoring that week. And that was the only week he finished. And he barely finished 12. So just a very bad start to the season. They're going to rely more on Jaylen Warren, who's averaging 4.95 yards per carry, so 1.7 more than Najee is. And if you look here, just a fun fact, I guess, that I saw on Twitter today. Najee Harris went to Alabama. I know you remember Trent Richardson, another Alabama running back. He had a very hot start to his career.
Yeah.
Just like Najee. And Trent Richardson's first year in the NFL, he was the number 7 running back. And then within the first 5 weeks of his sophomore year, he was the number 21 running back. And then after that, he was out the league. And 2 years after that, he was already out the league, traded to another team, and then out the league. Najee Harris last year in his first year was the number 3 running back, and now he is the number 29 running back in his first 5 weeks of this year. So not
the decline
trendy.
is real.
The decline is real for those Alabama backs. That's not named Derrick Henry. And if you look at their career numbers, Trent Richardson, his first 22 career games, 373 carries for 1,283 yards. 3.4 yards per carry, had 60 receptions, 437 yards, and 14 total touchdowns. Najee Harris in his first 22 career games, 376 carries, 1,422 rushing yards, 3.8 yards per carry, 87 receptions for 521 yards, and 12 total touchdowns. So his numbers are significantly better than Trent Richardson. Except for the touchdowns are just 2 less, but so maybe Najee can turn it around because he, like I said, definitely a lot better than Trent Richardson in his first 22 career games. But a guy that, if you're a dynasty owner and Najee Harris was the guy you're gonna build your team around. I know in our dynasty league, some guy traded Breece Hall away for Najee Harris.
Crazy.
And that's my guy said to build your team around. Najee's the guy said do not build your team around. But I'm pulling for him. Still early. We'll see. And then my last bust wide receiver is gonna be DJ Moore. I guess you can kind of expect it. Not that you do, but I mean, he was the wide receiver. He's the wide receiver 47 right now. In PPR league, just not good. Has never really had a good quarterback, I guess, in his first few years in the league. He's never been a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. He was the 16th.
He's never really had a good quarterback. Ever.
You can't blame him. I mean,
in his career,
and like, he's a good. I like him. I like his attitude. I like him as a receiver. Has good hands. He's a good route runner. But like I said, just hasn't ever had that quarterback that he can build a chemistry with. And he's had a different quarterback almost every year in the league, which is Cam Newton or Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield,
old Cam Newton,
PJ Walker, or some random guys like who was it, Kyle Allen or something, and. That's why he's never finished as a wide receiver 1. He was the wide receiver 16, then the wide receiver 23, then the wide receiver 18 last year. Now he's the wide receiver 47. Has career lows this year, 11.59 yards per catch, 5.32 yards per target, both career lows. Only 1 touchdown this year, 197 yards on 17 receptions. The last 3 years, he had over 1,100 yards. So somehow that's a lot of yards for a guy with no quarterback. But in all last 3 years, only 4 touchdowns. Every year, 4 touchdowns. So this year, he's on pace for way less yards, but he's probably on the mark to get that 4 touchdown, which is his career high in any season. But DJ Moore, a guy that I root for too.
You need that quarterback to be fantasy relevant, and he's literally like the proof. Yeah. He's the living proof that you need a quarterback to be fantasy relevant.
Yeah. And the only one I can think
of, you
can
be so good, like Scary Terry, but if you don't have that quarterback to be throwing you dots every single week, then you're not fantasy relevant.
Yeah. That's the hard truth.
Yeah. Sorry. But so you gave your hit, your busts, and your guys that you like. I made a little MVP list of my own. I have my fantasy MVPs. I'm gonna go with number 1, Cooper Kupp, man. This guy is just a dog. Little fun fact: Josh Allen is the only NFL player with more fantasy points than Cooper Kupp right now. Josh Allen has 146.5 PPR points, and Kupp has 132.1. So only 14 less. Kupp through the first 5 weeks last year had 118.8 PPR points. So he's on pace to break that. Yeah. He's on pace to be a better receiver than he was last year. So by 14 points. So yeah, he's on pace to break his wide receiver 1 numbers from last year. If you have him, leave him on your team. If you have him in Dynasty, don't trade him unless you're getting a haul of picks and, a solid player along with it. My fantasy MVP number 2 is going to be Saquon Barkley. He's the running back 3 right now. But with his workload and nobody compromising his snaps, he has the advantage over any other top running back, in my opinion. He will continue to receive a massive workload, especially because these Giants, they're short-handed or wide receiver, like we were saying. They don't have anybody So yeah, Saquon Barkley is my fantasy MVP number 2. Fantasy MVP number 3 is going to be Stephon Diggs. Only has 26 less fantasy points than his quarterback, Josh Allen.
Wow.
If you have this stack, like, don't touch it. This could possibly be a league-winning stack. He was able to put up monster numbers: 8 receptions, 102 receiving yards, and 1 touchdowns for 24.2 PPR points, even with Gabe Davis having that monster game, 32 points or whatever. So don't trade Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is my top best ball teams right now are the ones where I have Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs as a stack. So
that's crazy.
That's the ones I'm off. Like 3 of them I'm in first place because I have that stack. So.
That's crazy. Yeah. So don't get rid of that stack if you have it. Fantasy MVP number 4 is going to be my boy Austin Eckler. He's a bit of a late bloomer this season, but we're finally starting to see the workload we were expecting when we drafted him as our RB1. He just passed up Nick Chubb this week 5, for the RB1 spot after back-to-back 30-plus performances, and I expect it to, keep on going, man. He could see some down games if the Chargers decide to go pass heavy, but he should still be able to benefit if they be running, the screen routes, the wheel routes. So Austin Eckler's, he could be a league winner for sure.
Coming off his career high in rushing yards too, like 173 or something. So.
Yeah,
and he's a PPR monster. He's like a Christian McCaffrey type player. That's what he reminds me of.
Yeah, and I always tell everybody, like, Austin Eckler's a different kind of a running back. He's not like he's not like your Dalvin Cook. He's not like your Derrick Henry. He's a PPR running back. Like, he's literally a PPR running back. His specialty is to catch the ball. Yeah. So yeah, that's Austin Eckler. And then my last fantasy MVP is gonna be Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, he's always been like a top 3 running back in my opinion. But when you have Kareem Hunt behind you, like, it's expected that you're not gonna be seeing a big workload like a Saquon Barkley or a Derrick Henry, and that's the only thing that kind of worries me about Nick Chubb. But if the Browns trade away Hunt, I believe Nick Chubb is up there with Saquon for sure. Yeah. Probably passes him up for fantasy MVP. So we got to be on the lookout for the Browns. If they do anything with Hunt, I doubt that they do.
Because wasn't he going to sit out too? And because he wants a contract and they don't want to pay him.
He probably doesn't even want to be the running back too. He wants to be the main back. Dude, you literally have 2 running back ones on the same team, and you're only choosing to use Nick Chubb. So
I think, like I said it before, I think Nick Chubb, outside of in fans, I think he's one of the best running backs in the league. Just the way that guy runs, like, he's just disgusting. Like,
he's different.
Like, he's a different type of running back. Like, when he's healthy and on the field, like, man, he's a top 5 running back that I can remember, and since I've watched football, I'm not. Yeah. Like, he's a beast.
Yeah, and you have a guy like Hunt behind you, like, it's hard to maintain such a big workload for like such a great player. But if you take Hunt away, like, dude, Nick Chubb is better than all these guys, all these running backs that I just mentioned. And just be on the lookout for that.
Definitely. But I like those 5 guys. I don't think I drafted any of those guys except like in best ball maybe, but like in redraft or like dynasty, I don't have any of those guys sadly. So
I wasn't high on Saquon this year at all.
I drafted Saquon in redraft. That's the only one I drafted of those 5. Wow. But yeah, I kind of was passing up on those guys, but not Cooper Kupp. He was going early. But definitely league winners, definitely guys to hold on to. Definitely
MVP worthy. And we're just gonna kind of talk about Thursday night football a little bit. We got the Bears and the Commanders.
Yeah. Not that we're gonna give you guys any picks to start, I guess, but I mean, just note Jahan Dotson is out, so maybe you start Terry Scary if you have him. Curtis Samuel, I think, is the wide receiver 13 in PPR leagues right now, so start him if you have him. Have no other options.
If you didn't go heavy on quarterback and you have to decide between Wentz or like maybe Marcus Mariota, I would just go with the matchup. If you like Wentz's matchup better, go with Wentz. I would just base it off matchup pretty much.
Justin Fields had his best game of the season, not only in fantasy-wise, but had his most yards, had his most efficient throwing game.
Almost had a monster run, too.
Yeah, so you can start looking at Justin Fields. Hopefully he can turn it around and get going. But like I said, I'm starting Brian Robinson tomorrow just because I had to. I did do a FanDuel, so if you want to know my picks, I picked Justin Fields as my MVP. Then I went Carson Wentz. Velas Jones, Terry Scary, and Brian Robinson. So those are those 5 guys that I would say. If you do any FanDuels or DraftKings, maybe look for those or I saw someone was like, oh, I'm not gonna start. The only people I can think about starting for tomorrow's game are the defenses. So if you have one of those defenses, start one of those defenses too. It could be a game like last week where no touchdowns are scored, or it could be the opposite. And it's a high scoring fantasy game like we don't even know. But I don't want to guarantee you guys to start these people. But like I said, except Terry Scary, you're gonna keep Terry Scary in your lineup for the most part.
Yeah, it's hard to tell when it's like 2 D tier teams going at it.
Yeah, we had them both in tier D to start the season, and like now they're facing each other. Yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, just be careful if you're gonna start any of those guys. Definitely Terry Scary is the only one I would guarantee, or Curtis Samuel. I'd guarantee starting those guys.
If you're able to monitor the Brian Robinson situation, like if you have running backs that in your slots that are gonna do better than Brian Robinson, I would say just monitor that situation for a couple more weeks.
Yeah, I'm only starting him because I have no running backs. It's either him or Khalil Herbert right now, and they're both playing tomorrow, and they're both in. I mean, Brian Robinson, I feel like he's gonna be the bell cow.
I'll feel more comfortable. I'll feel more comfortable with Brian Robinson too.
I think, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it starts tomorrow. We'll see.
Yeah, and that's pretty much gonna conclude this episode of Your Big Fat Fantasy. We'll be coming to you for the Sunday episode and the Monday episode, and just be on your lookout for that. We're still looking out to give out this jersey and these hats, so try to get us to 200 subscribers. We're slowly climbing up. Thank you for the support. Anything you want to add?
No, just thanks again. Yeah, we love the support, love the views and the comments. Thank you guys. And like I said, some guy messaged me in the morning on Sunday, asked me who to start. If you guys have any questions, DM us, text us, comment on our videos, let us know. If you want anything you want us to talk about, let us know too. We're all up for topics and ideas for our episodes. So
we might implement some special guests pretty soon when we get a third mic. We're just waiting on the funds, and
so
we'll be having some guests on the show pretty soon. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, thank you, and good luck to your week 6. Starts now.
Yeah.
See you guys.
See ya.